What if the most terrifying thing about the future of cars isn't how fast they're getting, but how much they're holding back from what's already possible? Because every real car lover has felt this quiet frustration that the machines we imagine in our heads are always more extreme, more honest, more unfiltered than the ones we're actually allowed to buy. And that discomfort grows the moment you realize this concept wasn't created to impress anyone, it was designed to expose a truth manufacturers usually keep hidden, a line that was never meant to be crossed, where design stops being safe, engines stop being reasonable, and speed stops being something you market. Because the second you see proportions like this, the second you even hear the idea of a V18 existing without apology, something uncomfortable clicks, and suddenly you're questioning whether the hypercars you once admired were ever the peak at all, or just carefully edited versions of something far more dangerous, far more luxurious, and far more real. And when you finally realize this came from Bugatti, the fear shifts, because if this car was never meant to exist, the real question isn't why it was hidden, it's whether you're ready to see how small your dream car expectations actually were once this door opens. The reason this car feels unsettling isn't just because it looks aggressive, it's because the design doesn't behave like a normal hypercar at all, as if it was shaped without asking for approval, where every surface feels intentional but refuses to explain itself at first glance. The body stretched and compressed in proportions that don't chase beauty, but authority, making most modern hypercars suddenly feel overstyled and dishonest by comparison. Because this design doesn't scream for attention, it quietly intimidates, and the longer you stare at its width, its stance, its mass pressed low to the ground, the more uncomfortable it becomes when you realize these proportions aren't exaggerated for drama, but optimized for something they're not ready to talk about yet, something tied to stability at speeds most cars were never meant to survive. Airflow behaving less like wind and more like pressure, luxury no longer defined by chrome or softness, but by presence and control. And when you understand this came from Bugatti, the curiosity tightens. Because if a company obsessed with perfection chose a form this raw, this unapologetic, then the terrifying question isn't what it looks like. It's what kind of performance would ever demand a shape like this, and why the numbers behind it might already be far beyond what the public is prepared to accept. The moment you hear V18, your brain almost rejects it, because modern hypercars trained us to believe 12 or 16 cylinders were the ceiling. But this concept doesn't respect ceilings at all, and that's what makes it disturbing. Because it wasn't imagined to chase headlines. It exists because anything smaller would have been a compromise. A power plant designed not just to produce absurd numbers, but to deliver power so effortlessly that speed stops feeling dramatic and starts feeling inevitable. Where torque doesn't build, it arrives fully formed. Acceleration doesn't spike, it surrounds you in a steady, silent pressure. And suddenly, the fear isn't how fast it could go, but how calmly it would get there, forcing you to question why manufacturers convinced us complexity was a limitation instead of a choice. And as you start picturing 18 cylinders breathing in perfect mechanical harmony, the unease deepens when you realize this engine isn't about excess at all. It's about control at velocities where current cars begin to feel nervous. And when you understand this came from Bugatti, the thought becomes heavier. Because if this is what sits at the core of the car, then everything around it, design, luxury, even safety, had to evolve in ways we haven't been shown yet, making it impossible to look away as you wait to understand what kind of velocity would ever demand an engine this unapologetic.
At this point, speed stops being a number and starts becoming the reason this car was never meant to be discussed openly. Because when performance climbs beyond a certain threshold, the problem isn't engineering anymore, it's explanation. And that's where this concept becomes unsettling, not because it chases a record, but because it operates in a zone where publishing the number would immediately raise questions nobody wants to answer. Questions about tires that aren't sold, roads that don't exist, and drivers that aren't supposed to feel this calm while moving faster than most aircraft during takeoff, with no drama, no vibration, no sense of strain. And the fear quietly shifts from how fast can it go to why doesn't anyone want us thinking this fast is normal? Because once speed feels effortless instead of violent, it rewires expectations forever, making every current hypercar suddenly feel loud, nervous, and theatrical. And when you realize this came from Bugatti, the hook tightens. Because if this car can cruise where others panic, then speed was never the limit. Comfort at speed was, and understanding that forces you to stay, because the final piece isn't about performance at all, it's about why something this complete can't be allowed to exist in public reality. This is where everything finally aligns, because once the full identity of this machine is revealed, the title, "This Bugatti was never meant to exist," and the thumbnail, "They hid this from us," stop sounding dramatic and start sounding factual, as this concept becomes known as Bugatti Eclipsis V18, a name drawn from the idea of briefly exposing something humanity isn't meant to fully process. A car built around a V18 not to chase headlines, but to eliminate strain entirely, delivering a level of sustained dominance at extreme velocity where stability is no longer reactive but predicted, achieved through active aerodynamic surfaces that continuously reshape themselves in real time, an AI-driven chassis intelligence that reads the road milliseconds before you do, and control systems so precise the car feels like it's thinking ahead of your intentions, while inside, luxury abandons softness and becomes authority, with adaptive seating that firms as speed rises, biometric sensors reading stress, heart rate, and micro-movements to subtly adjust steering weight, throttle response, and suspension behavior instantly. Because this isn't a car you simply drive, it's a machine that collaborates with you, learns your reactions, corrects hesitation before it becomes danger, and makes speed feel disturbingly calm. And that's why something like Eclipsis V18 could never exist in public reality, not because it's too fast, but because the moment a car becomes smarter than fear, more composed than human instinct, and more honest than the industry narrative, it stops being a product and becomes proof that the future was always closer than we were supposed to realize.